In the last video, we connected to the music database, first using a driver manager, then using a data source. In this video, I'll start with a new project called Query Music. It has the usual main class in DevLPA and so on. I'll show you how to add the MySQL driver jar to the project again here as a library in my module settings. You'll need to do this before proceeding if you're creating a new project as well. Rather than getting username and password with Swing UI components, which gets old fast, this time I'll use a combination of a properties file and an environment variable. Again, it's important to research best practices for your own environment, and I'm not recommending this approach for a production application. To start, I'll open the project panel and create a new file at the project root called music.properties. This file will just contain plain text key value pairs. In the editor window, I'll enter the data I need to connect to a data source without using a connection string. This includes the server name or host, and I'll make that localhost, the port, the database name, so music there. I'll enter dev user as the username. For now, I'm just going to put asterisks here in the password value. You're welcome to enter your password there for your own testing, but I'll instead use an environment variable to add another level of security. I can set this up on my operating system, but I can also just make it part of my build configuration. So I'll go to the Run menu item, then select Edit Configurations. As you can see, the Configurations pane is empty. So I'll exit this and run the program, which creates a configuration, and then come back to this screen again. You can see there's a text field where you can enter a list of additional environment variables. So I'll enter my SQL_pass there and equals and set that to my password. Obviously, I'll blur out my password. Getting back to the code, in the main method, I'll set up a properties variable. I'll do this at the start of this main method. Because I'm reading data from a file, I need a try-catch. The properties object has a load method that takes an input stream, so I'll set that up to use the music properties file at the project root. This file will be set to read only. I'll catch the IO exception and throw an unchecked exception if I did get an error. I won't retrieve the password until I need it at the time I connect. This eliminates any concerns about it being part of any memory dump or string pool. Where I had values hard-coded in the set methods on data source in the previous video, I'll use the values in the props variable. I'll create a variable for the data source. This is of type MySQL data source. Instead of passing hard-coded values, I'll pass the values that are in the properties object. I can get these using the getProperty method with the key name, so here I'll get server name. For the port, I'll pass the value to an integer. And I'll pass the database name in. This is actually optional, and I'll show you that in a bit. Okay, I've got the data source initially set up. Now I want to establish a connection with my user and password. I'll use a try with resources block because it's important to close database resources just like file resources. In the parentheses, I'll use type inference and call getConnection on my data source. I'll pass it the user property, and I'll pass it the password. This I'll get from the environment variable directly here by calling system.getEnv and pass the name I used, so my SQL_pass. If you wanted to use the password from the properties file, use getProperty. I'll end the try clause on its own line because I'll be adding to the try clause statements shortly. I'll print success if this all works. Otherwise, I'll catch the checked SQL exception, rethrowing it as a runtime exception. I'll run this. And success. I'm connecting to the music database without having to enter the username and password, which was getting tedious quickly. This was a quick review of connecting again, but I did want to show you this alternative. It's time to actually get some data now. To do this, I can use a statement, which is an interface type in Java. It's implemented by the database vendor in the JDBC driver and represents an SQL statement. This can be either DML or DDL. The statement, once it's executed, will return the results of the query in a results set object. I'll start with a very simple select statement to get all the artists. I'll set this up as a variable before the try with resources statement. I'll make this a string named query and type in the SQL statement I want executed as a string literal. Here, I'll just select star from music.artists. This statement will select all columns and all rows or records from the artists table in the music database or schema. Now, there are a couple of things here I just want to point out. First, the SQL commands and clauses in this statement are all specified in uppercase, which is common practice. In contrast, the schema and table name are in lowercase. Although MySQL is a case-insensitive language, some databases are case-sensitive, so again it's best practice to use lowercase for data objects, both in naming them and querying them. Specifying the music schema here isn't necessary either, because we've specified it in the data resource. Even so, you should still make a habit of including it in your SQL statement like this. It helps with clarity and may actually be better performant in some databases. To actually run this, I first have to create a statement object. I'll include this in my try with resources clause. Hopefully you'll remember that this clause can have multiple declarations separated by a semicolon. So I'll start by adding that semicolon to the end of the connection statement. Then I'll add the next declaration after that. I can get a statement instance by calling create statement on the connection instance. For a select SQL statement, you use the execute query method to actually execute this query against your database, which in turn returns a result set. First, I'll remove the success statement I had there. Instead of that, I'll set up a result set variable, then assign it statement.executeQuery, passing it my query string. All three objects, the connection, the statement, and the result set are all resources that need to be closed. I could have included the result set in the try clause along with the connection and statement, but it's actually not necessary here. A result set object is automatically closed when the statement object that generated it is closed. It's also closed if the statement is re-executed or used to retrieve the next result from a sequence of multiple results. The result set in this case will contain all the records in the artist's table. To use it, I loop through its contents with a while loop. Like an iterator, I can check if there's a next value in the result set. I'll print each record, first the artist ID, then the artist name. There are different ways to retrieve the column or field data. I can do it by index, as I'm doing for the artist ID, so I'll call resultSet.getInt and pass it 1. Unlike most software languages, SQL starts with 1 as the first index and not 0, so 1 will get the first column's data, which is an integer value, the artist ID here. Alternately, I can use the field name, so here I'll call getString and pass artist_name here. I'll put the closing parentheses on its own line to support changes later on. Okay, we are done. Let's give this a shot. I'll run this now. This will list all the artists in the table in the order of the artist ID, as you can see. Now this is real success. I don't know about you, but I always feel a sense of accomplishment getting that first query to work in a new database connection. I'm communicating with my database via Java code, and that's pretty empowering really. In fact, there are very popular database management tools such as Toad, dbeaver, and Oracle's SQL Developer that have been written in Java. These are similar to the MySQL Workbench, which is actually written in C++. You can use any of these tools to connect to a variety of databases. Okay, now let's change this SQL statement to get a few records from the view which was named album view in the music database. This time I'll limit the data coming back to just a single album named Tapestry, which I can do with a where clause. You can think of a where clause as a filter to get a subset of data based on a particular condition as defined in the clause. Before the statement that sets the query variable, I'll add another variable for the album name. The album name will be Tapestry, as I said. I'll change the query below that and use a formatted string to include album name in the query. So first, I'll change the table from artists to album view. You can query a view just like you would a table. I'll add a where clause, so where album name equals. I'll set that to a single quote, %s, single quote. In ANSI SQL, string literals should be enclosed in single quotes when they're used in where clauses like this. I'll be talking about using ANSI SQL in a little more detail in a bit. Double quotes are used to delimit identifiers such as table and column names, which means these could contain spaces or other characters that aren't allowed in text literals. Some SQL implementations, including MySQL, allow you to use double quotes around text literals, but I'm going to stick with single quotes. I used a formatted method on the string to pass in the album name variable. Because the data coming back will be different for this view from the artist's table, I need to change my code in the while loop where I'm printing data out. I'll add an extra %s as a third element in the string being printed. I'll change the code to get an argument from 1 or the first column and use the column name, which is track number in this case. After the artist name gets string, I'll add a comma and a new line. Finally, I'll also include the song title as well. If I run this, I'll see that Carole King was the artist for the entire album and each of the songs is listed by the track number order. The view itself is ordered by track number, which is why I didn't need an order by clause in my SQL statement. If you don't know what the data might be that's returned from your query, you can use the result set metadata object to get information about the result set. Let me show you how to do this. I'll add this code before I execute the result set. There's a method on the result set called getMetadata. On that object, I can get the number of columns that were returned, so I'll loop from 1 to this count. For each column, I'll print the column index. Remember, this starts at 1. I'll print the column name and its type. I'll pass the appropriate data to that printf statement. There are multiple methods on the result set metadata, and 2 of these are getColumnName and getColumnTypeName, each which takes a column index. I'll include a separator line after this code runs. Running this, you can see information about the columns printed out first. I can use this information to help facilitate handling data in a generic fashion. I'll show you an example of this next. I'll remove the code I have in the while loop. Before this loop, I'll add a column of headers using the result set metadata. Again, I'll loop from 1 to the column count, incrementing by 1. This time, I'll print each column name, making it left justified and allowing for 15 characters. I'll also make the column names uppercase. After the column headers are printed, I'll print a new line here. Now, in the while loop, I'll do something similar. Again, I'll loop through the metadata index. Here, I'll print the result set's value using getString with the metadata index. After each record, I want a new line. Running this, I get all the data in a grid, much like I'd see if I ran that query in the MySQL workbench. I can use this method for any type of select query from any table or view. Obviously, 15 characters might not be enough or the right way to format in every case, but you get the idea here. The result set metadata object has other methods such as column type and width, which you can use to make this more flexible. Okay, so that's a quick introduction to the statement type using the execute query method. This method returns the results of the query in a result set object. And you can use the result set metadata object to query information about the result set. I'll stop this video here before it gets too long. In the next video, we'll continue to query the music database using this project and talk about different aspects of the java.sql.statement type.